For Aries rising and or moon sign for September 2023. Aries, your ruling planet Mars is moving through your sixth host sign. This is the sign Virgo, as Mercury is now retrograde in your fifth sign with the sun. So you are obviously thinking a lot about your day-to-day activities and how you can plan ahead at this stage, but you're also having to do so while reviewing many things, and more especially reviewing why you do anything that you do. That's essentially because of Jupiter's station now. It will, in a few days on September 1st or September 4th, station retrograde. This is the chart for September 1st. Mercury is already retrograde in a trine to Jupiter, your first and fifth houses. So this is very much about finding inspiration again. Maybe it's that you look back to some sort of long lost past. Who knows? Maybe it's that you look back for an opportunity in the recent past, but it's very much again about what it is that you find inspiring, what gives your life meaning and purpose. And when you get that, and this is a process obviously of getting that and finding that spark again, you will then do anything it takes to do that thing. And that's what Mars, your ruler in the sixth host sign in Virgo, is all about. Again, it's important to be really open-minded because of Mercury retrograde around planning. So it's like penciling things in as opposed to being very definitive about them, but still moving ahead and planning and strategizing even. I think a better expression of Mars in the sixth is strategy and being very precise while at the same time being open-minded. And that might sound like a contradiction, but you can be very strategic and at the same time be open-minded that it might not pan out the way you think it would. So this is also important because Rahu, the north node of the moon, is starting to, finish up in your sign over the next 2 months now. It's going to finish in Aries. And now that Jupiter is retrograde, behaving almost as if it were like Rahu, they're both retrograde from the 4th of September. It might feel like you're going through a lot of personal review now over the last many months, in fact, a year and a half of Rahu's transit. And you might look back at all the changes that you've gone through personally. Now, this might literally, if it's your rising sign, show physical changes that you're looking at. But any which way, it's about the personal changes, the transformations that you've personally gone through. And because Saturn is in the 11th host sign aspecting your sign, where also Rahu rules and is in your sign, and Mars in your sixth sign aspects your sign, there's so much emphasis on you at the moment, on you personally, and the changes that you've been through and that you continue to go through, that really it's probably a good idea to keep an eye on the bigger picture this whole time while you're potentially getting bogged down in the day-to-day stuff, the everyday stuff that you have to do. And again, if you're not finding it inspiring, if you at this point think perhaps there's a better way to approach this or to approach myself, perhaps I can see myself differently here and open my mind to different ways of doing what I normally do. Usually September is a great year for just doing things, for getting everything scheduled and orderly and taking stock. But again, this year, for you, Aries especially, I think it's an important time to really reconsider who you are and finding that spark again in a different kind of way. And be really patient with it as well, of course, especially up until the middle of the month, until Mercury at least has stationed direct. So I can show you that here by September 4th. You'll see here that there's a line under Jupiter, which means it's retrograde. And now that we have Jupiter retrograde, we have nearly all the planets retrograde, except for your ruler Mars, which again is this kind of gung-ho about moving forward. The other planet, though, to go direct on the same day that Jupiter retrogrades is Venus. So September 4th obviously is a big turning point in the month. So Venus now stations direct in your fourth house. This is, of course, about relationships, about finances, also family dynamics, all of personal relationships and finances for you, Aries. And because it's now stationed direct in your fourth house, something can at least start to move forward now. And this sort of ending this period of reminiscing and thinking and dwelling on certain things that, you know, potentially brought you out of the present. And now that it's moving forward, can bring you back more into the present moment and to enjoy something as well, because it's such a busy month in many ways because of all the other transits. Retrogrades don't mean that things are just going backwards and things aren't moving forward only. It also means that we feel very busy, especially Mercury retrograde. It just, the mind is really busy. So it's nice to have a nice Venus direct station now in your fourth house to help you enjoy some alone time, some home time, some holiday perhaps. Now, I would caution that if you were traveling, that this is a very complicated time for travel for obvious reasons, you might say, but it's really essentially down to the Mercury retrograde and the Jupiter retrograde now in your sign. And though they're in a trine to each other, that is a kind of an easeful aspect between these two planets. It is, in a way, it's still actually more complicated than it would be normally. So it's like, if you are traveling, if you are planning on going anywhere, actually, yeah, things might happen easily, but things might happen easily that you don't want to happen. Everything's moving backwards, perhaps against the flow, against what you want to make happen and move forward. So just be mindful of that, that it's real sort of a month for, yes, getting strategic and really planning your day-to-day life, but really keeping an open mind about how you do anything and maybe taking a step back from all of that. And then while at the same time Venus stations, maybe just enjoying some home time, some downtime as all of this turns around. Because it will, like I said, turn around by the middle of the month even. We see here on the 15th, on the new moon, we have a new moon at 27 degrees of Leo, your fifth sign. And this is where Mercury stationed retrograde. And now on the new moon itself, on the 15th, it will actually station direct. So obviously there's a lot here for you, Aries. You can plan more effectively because now you have a new moon and Mercury station in your fifth house. This is very much about planning ahead. Fifth house is very much about the future. And anything you're planning at all, whether it's around any sort of creative expression, any future planning at all, if it's around your children, if it's around any sort of anything that you're doing, this is a great time to think about that on this new moon on the 15th. Let me just show you the full moon also, which is on the 29th of September. This is a full moon in your 12th host sign. Let me bring it back to your rising sign, Aries. So the full moon is in Pisces, opposite the sun, which has by mid-month, or just after that new moon on the 15th, moved into your sixth sign. Again, very much about day-to-day stuff. But this full moon on the 29th is about getting a balance between all of those things that you're probably going to be really busy with in September, the everyday stuff, and you might get really bogged down and not be able to see the wood for the trees, as it were. You might just get so bogged down in details, you miss the bigger picture. This full moon on the 29th is allowing you and asking you perhaps to see that bigger picture, to let go a little bit more. And by letting go, actually, you allow things to happen more easily and more effectively and efficiently. Because in a way, this Mars in Virgo, its downside in a sense is overdoing the details and getting so bogged down in it that you actually aren't as effective as you would have been otherwise if you just maybe just let it go for a while. Just let problems sort themselves out. And when you come back to it, things will have improved. So Aries, a very busy month for sure, but a very complicated month because of all the planets either retrograding or going forward again, and lots to do, but also lots to keep an open mind about. And again, in a positive way, think about these things as in, yeah, I can maybe look at myself differently and do things differently, and more opportunities can come my way if I keep an open mind. So Aries, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead, and until next time. For Taurus rising and or moon sign for September 2023, Taurus, your ruler Venus is starting to slow now and station, and will station direct by the 4th of September. The chart I have up here is for the 1st of September. So in a few days into the month, we have your ruler moving forward again. So that's good news, of course. And you can start to move forward in terms of your everyday life and routines and your sense of self and what you're doing. And the third house is very much about interacting and engaging and traveling and thinking And all of these can improve, absolutely. On the same day, on September 4th, Jupiter will station retrograde on the same day that your ruler stations direct. So there's obviously an important shift that goes on here with your ruler moving forward and then Jupiter in the 12th house moving backwards. So there might be some longer term, bigger plans that you have to kind of maybe put on hold in a way, and especially around perhaps financial issues, earnings, monies, because of the 8th and 11th Lord Jupiter in your 12th house of spending. So this would be a time perhaps to think about that long-term plan and stick with it for the long haul and think about the bigger picture. And with Venus, you're moving forward now in your 3rd house. That's very much every day, and your everyday life can feel like it can start to move. Although Mercury, of course, is retrograde in your 4th house now as well. And so you have to also be mindful of that sort of the everyday snags that can happen with Mercury retrograde. In your everyday life, I think things can, in your home life especially, and in traveling around and doing the day-to-day stuff, I think things can be really busy actually. But again, if you're just focusing on that, and you might be focusing a lot on that, of course, but if you're just doing that, you're going to lose balance against all of these other planets, these slower moving planets on the other side of the zodiac, including the Jupiter retrograde, the Saturn retrograde, all of these retrogrades. Asking you in a sense really to look at the bigger picture here. Why are you doing whatever you're doing? Maybe again thinking about what you're getting out of it as well because of Jupiter's retrograde. What are you gaining from anything that you do, whether it's actually in your work life, whether it's anything you do? What are you getting out of it, and why are you doing that? So that's Jupiter retrograde in your 12th house. Rahu is also continuing to retrograde in your 12th house. It's got another couple of months, September and October, and then it's done in your 12th house. So once that moves out, at least then the emphasis and the exaggeration of Rahu in the 12th house can at least maybe hone in, or I should say, rein in your expenditure. So now that Jupiter is stationing retrograde and till the end of the year, I think this is an important time to reassess your spending habits, essentially. And although at the same time, because Jupiter is the 8th Lord in the 12th house, this is seen like as a quote unquote double negative. So actually, there could be some benefit to this. There could be something that you're gaining here in terms of there's some challenge perhaps or obstacle you have to overcome it financially, and then you can actually gain something. But again, with Jupiter retrograde, it's probably more likely in the next few months until the very last day of the year when it stations direct. It's probably a better time at this time to look back for opportunities to gain something. And again, really the question you're probably going to be asking yourself more so is, why do I do anything I do? What do I hope to gain from it? So Mercury continues to retrograde until the 15th. So things start to shift around on the 15th as the sun moves into Virgo. But that is also the 15th, a new moon. So the new moon on the 15th is at 27 degrees sidereal Leo, your 4th host sign with your Mercury station direct. So there's definitely a sense of things moving forward from the end of September. And this new moon on the 15th of September is a good time to plant some seeds around the home life, around making plans for your future, your children's future, if you have any, or just your own plans for your own future. And also, this would have a lot to do with finances as well. And because Mercury now stationing with this new moon is in a trine to Jupiter in your 12th sign, again, it's a lot to do with finances and home and planning ahead now. And there could be some changes, therefore, and things turning around by mid-September. And that's obviously a positive thing. But just to really do this more intentionally, to be really focused and to be really patient up until this point because of all of these retrogrades. So once Mercury stations on the new moon, really start to plan ahead, I would say, with Mars now really moving forward through your 5th house, Virgo, Mercury moving forward, the sun will join Mars in Virgo. And then everything can start to really sort of feel like you're planning ahead finally by the end of September. Again, it's going to be really busy in terms of your everyday life and planning ahead, those kinds of things. But again, there's probably going to be a bigger picture sort of question in your mind about why you're doing any of this anyway in the first place, even though things are really taking your attention most likely. Now, of course, as with all the signs, it depends what cycle you're in yourself, apart from the transits. They're called the dashas in Vedic astrology. So if you're in a Jupiter period, that's more likely going to take your attention away from this kind of busyness. But if you're in a Venus, Mercury, Sun, Mars, these kinds of periods, you're obviously going to be really focused on this everyday stuff and moving ahead. And again, it's very much a personal thing, a private thing, a home situation, planning around, again, maybe children, maybe thinking about your creative expression, projects that you're on the go, things like that. Just keep an open mind about it until mid-month, I would say, though. And then by the end of the month, we have a full moon in your, let me bring it back to Taurus. So there's a full moon in your 11th sign opposite your 5th sign. So a big emphasis obviously on these very personal 4th and 5th sign, and Mercury will join these planets here in Virgo in your 5th sign. All of that is really powerful time to again plan ahead. But if you get too stuck in that, and this is the problem with having Virgo in your 5th sign, it's great in one way because it's great for planning. But if you're only planning, it's very future orientated. You can sort of get so bogged down in the details of planning all of these details and trying to manage it all that you forget to maybe just kick back and enjoy yourself. And this is where the full moon on the 29th of September can come in and help you sort of maybe balance this a bit more. And so the full moon in Pisces, your 11th whole sign, is very much about maybe having a bit of, social time, enjoying some time with friends, enjoying a break, and just enjoying some sort of break from all of this planning, essentially. So that's the full moon on the 29th. It's definitely a busy month, September. And I think you're going to feel it in a very day-to-day way, in a very private, personal way in your home life, potentially. Even though, again, also that contrasts with the opposite side and your maybe public life, work, and all of those things, and earnings, and all of those bigger aspects of your chart. But it's just possibly going to feel like your more personal home life can move forward now, whereas your bigger professional kind of objectives, ambitions, and earnings and all of that might feel like it's like a bigger picture that is slower to kind of progress here. And so again, the balance between these two things is important, and again, more especially important in September, because September is a very much a balancing month anyway, as we come up to the solstice, or not the solstice, sorry, the equinox. And that's another important point leading up to this full moon also, that everything is in balance in a way. And as everything balances out in nature, then we can find a balance in our own life to kind of maybe take a pause within all the busyness. So Taurus, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead, and until next time. For Gemini rising and or moon sign for September 2023, Gemini, your ruler Mercury is retrograde. This is something you're used to. It does it 3, sometimes even 4 times a year for 3 weeks or so at a time. So you're always really going in and out of retrograde. In other words, your mind is always going through a process of review and reflection as you've potentially then moved very fast in the previous weeks. And then it snaps back and asks you to kind of really review everything that you've done. And so as you go in and out of this process of going forward, thinking about things, moving forward, and then reviewing things as you look back on what you're doing, it's very much a private thing for you, Gemini, more so than Virgo, for example, because it rules your 1st and your 4th house. So it's very much about what would I like, what would I enjoy, and this is especially when you have a Mercury retrograde in your 3rd sign. What do I want? What would make me happy? 3rd sign leads to the 4th sign. So 3rd sign is the thing you want to go for, and because you think it's going to make you happy. So think about the things that make you happy. Think about the people you engage with also that bring happiness. And obviously you're having to rethink a lot about this, because not only is Mercury retrograde in your 3rd sign, but Jupiter is about to station retrograde in your 11th sign in a trine to Mercury. So there's this sense of It might feel easeful in one way, but it also might feel very much delayed, and lots of things may be postponed, whether again, socially, friends, circles, all of that, dealing with other people and communicating, there might be some delay here. There might be some snag that you have to deal with, but the potential really with that is to take the time out to sort of really pay attention to why it is that you want to engage with anybody. What is it that you want from this engagement? That's especially because of Jupiter, like I said, in your 11th house retrograde. It's the 7th and 10th Lord in your 11th house. So very much about why you engage with anyone or do anything with anyone, and why you do anything essentially, and what you want to gain from it. So thinking about how you're communicating what you want, thinking about how you get what you want, and what do you want anyway. And then not getting too bogged down in the details about moving forward on those plans, but again, thinking about that bigger picture and that bigger question as well, which is the why. Why do I want? Once you're clear about the why, the what will work itself out. All of the details will work themselves out. And it's going to take some time, of course, to work them out, but they will get ironed out. Now, the first couple of weeks of September is a bit potentially, frustrating because things aren't moving forward as clearly and as quickly potentially as you would like. But again, as I said, Gemini, you're used to this Mercury retrograde phenomenon, and you constantly go through a process of review and what you want and where your life is going. The fourth house isn't just about home life. It's essentially also about the direction your life is taking. So definitely thinking about where you're going, what you're doing, and how you get there. By the 4th of September, we have Venus stationed direct as Jupiter stations retrograde. So there's some interesting turnarounds here by the 4th of September already. But certainly by the 15th of September, as Mercury stations, things can really turn around and start to move forward by the latter part of September. Venus stationing in your second sign, definitely a time to really think about your plans moving forward. And it's more enjoyable in a way when Venus is moving forward. It doesn't mean that it's not enjoyable when it's retrograde, but that we can spend so much time reminiscing on the past that we're not really present. So you might have found yourself doing that a lot more. And now that stationing, you can start to move forward and be more present also, which is an important thing with Venus, because Venus is all about enjoying the present and bringing you back to your senses also. Venus represents the senses more than any planet, as it rules the sign Taurus, and it is transiting now through your second sign, Cancer, which is very much like that. It's the second sign, naturally Taurus. So it's very sensual, and senses bring us into the moment more than anything. Use any of the five senses and you're right into the moment straight away. There's no denying that when you feel something, you taste something, you hear something, you smell something, you see something, it's in the present moment. So it's a great time to really focus on that, I would say, around this Venus direct station on the 4th of September. And it will assuage any sort of this kind of mind busyness that can be there with Mercury retrograde, where you might feel so like busy in your mind with Mercury retrograde in your third, especially, and Mars in your fourth in Virgo. And at the home, you might be feeling like you're wanting to plan things and do things, and things, might get frustrating when things aren't happening as quickly as you would like them, or you're not communicating as effectively, or somebody says something you don't understand as a misinterpretation. Whatever it is, it can just feel everything is a bit backed up, but at the same time really busy. You might be losing perspective of things. Bring yourself back to your senses with Venus. Bring yourself into that with any of the senses or all of them in a sensual experience, and be more present, I would say. That's probably a better use of these transits at this time. Then on the 15th, as I said, we have first of all, your ruler Mercury station. But on the same day, on the 15th, we have a new moon. It's at 27 degrees of Leo, your third sign. And this is actually where Mercury stationed retrograde in August, by the end of August. So this is a great time to really plant some seeds, to make some commitments to yourself and how you're going to move forward and getting what you want. And again, remembering that You have to be clear about, first of all, what you want and why you want it, which is the trine to Jupiter here in Aries, in your 11th sign. Who do you want to be with in that scenario? You know, thinking about whatever it is you do and who you do it with. So that's an important new moon on the 15th of September. And again, it's about planting seeds, as is every new moon. And again, this one is especially about making commitments to yourself with this lunar mansion involved at the end of Leo moving into Virgo. And of course, the planets then move into, including the sun, move into Virgo. Mercury will move into Virgo subsequently. So everything's starting to move forward now into Virgo. And let me just show you also the full moon. Let me bring it back to your sign, Gemini. So Mercury by October, the beginning of October, will move into Virgo and exalted in Virgo. I'll talk about that next month. But really, you're coming into a period where everything can feel like it's moving forward and you're planning ahead and you're being very effective and efficient and everything feels like it's on point. And all of that is great. And Virgo is needed. But if you overdo that, the tendency then would be to micromanage and then get bogged down in so many details that you lose perspective in that way. So this full moon on the 29th of September in Pisces, your 10th host sign, is asking you the bigger questions again. Is asking you to let go a little bit more as well and to not get too bogged down in details, but to again see the bigger picture of the whys and the longer term plans that you have, goals, aspirations, and inspirations. What inspires you and who inspires you, more especially, actually, for this full moon on the 29th of September? Who inspires you? Thinking about these things is going to be important for you, Gemini, by the end of the month. So definitely a busy, busy month, September. And it's always busier with Mercury retrogrades anyway, but there's so much else going on. And again, if you find a balance between all that busyness and again, asking those bigger questions about why and who, all of these things are going to be more important, because then if you know the why, then you're more likely going to do the everyday stuff, the details, and you're more likely going to be clear about those things when you're clear about the why. So Gemini, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Cancer rising and or moon sign for September 2023. Cancer, Venus is about to station direct in your sign on the 4th of September. And on the same day, Jupiter will station in your 10th host sign in the sign Aries. So let me actually just show you that here on the 4th of September. It's an important turning point for many different indications, actually. But essentially, this is about you feeling that sense of things moving forward more personally, while thinking about the bigger picture in terms of Jupiter and all of the Saturn, Jupiter, bigger themes that are going on around you and in your work life, especially and more publicly. So obviously there's a need to find a balance now as well between your private and public life. Your private life, though, it can move forward and you might have plans around home and socializing and home life and friends and all of these things are highlighted by Venus for you, as well as earnings and all of that. And so Venus now stationing direct can feel good because things can feel like they're starting to move forward now. And as it then moves into your second sign, you can start to plan those things. But again, if you're not thinking about the bigger picture of the work that you're doing and why you do anything you do, this is the bigger question here for you, Cancer, because Jupiter, which is now stationed retrograde, ruler of your 9th house, in your 10th house, moving backwards, asking you to look back at why you do anything that you do and looking back for opportunity also, and maybe looking back at doing things you used to do. It's also the 6th lord, so it's about the everyday stuff. And for you, Cancer, Jupiter is always about finding a balance between and getting those mixes right between the everyday humdrum, detail orientated, like day in, day out stuff, and the more profound, inspiring stuff, and how you combine those to do something that is of meaning and purpose to you. But again, because it's retrograde now and acting as if it were like Rahu, which is also retrograde in your 10th whole sign, This is really a time to look back at all the changes that have also happened in your work life, in the world, in a sense, in a bigger way, for the next many months until the very last day of the year, actually. But again, also thinking about, for you personally, why you do what you do. And when you're clear about the why, you're more than likely going to be able to implement the how. The how is not so important in September, even though you have to think about the how, of course. But because there's so many other things going on, including a Mercury retrograde, and Mercury retrogrades are always generally a kind of complicated time in terms of the how, for sure. But again, if you're not clear about the why, the how is going to really bog you down. And with Mars moving through your third sign, Virgo, with Mercury, its ruler, 12 signs from there in Leo, retrograde, it's going to likely feel like things are going to get backed up a lot, and it's not clear to you how to move forward, even though there's a real impetus to move forward and to get really orientated on the details. The details are really not very clear from the beginning. And that's why it's especially important to ask the question of the why, not the how. So even though Jupiter and Mercury are in a trine to each other, that's all great, that's all well and good. But at the same time, because they're moving retrograde until the mid-month, at least, when Mercury stations direct, everything for the first couple of weeks of September is likely to feel backed up and not very clear and not moving forward. And you might get frustrated with that, with Mars in your third sign, and you might even lash out. And that's something to be mindful of in engaging with anyone. If you're communicating in any which way, whether it's verbally or text message or emails, anything at all, think about what you're communicating, because you might get really frustrated. You're hanging on the line waiting for somebody to answer the phone, or you put on hold or whatever. These kinds of everyday sort of things that can really get us frustrated. This is something to be mindful of, because, and or for example, travel. If any of those things get sort of backed up or get, are not running smoothly, you'll very easily get frustrated and get bogged down if you, again, don't know why the hell you're doing it in the first place. So if you know why you're doing it, you'll do anything. You'll overcome any obstacle, any sort of these obstacles, which are generally just everyday annoyances. They're not necessarily big issues. The bigger issue is actually the why. So let me show you, by the 15th, we have a new moon in your second whole sign. This is in Leo at 27 degrees of Leo. This is actually where Mercury stationed to go retrograde. This is in your second sign, about money, family. There's some things that have to get worked out here, quite obviously, with a Mercury retrograde in your second sign, financially and in terms of your family. So whatever family dynamics or whatever money issues that you have to deal with now, there's definitely a whole review in process for the first 2 weeks of September. Now, if you think that everything is going to move forward and get worked out and sign on the dotted line from the get-go, then you're just going to meet with setbacks. So it's important that you maybe leave those kinds of things aside for now. Maybe don't make any decisions, important decisions, especially around money and family, and just slow down with that for the first couple of weeks. By the new moon on the 15th, though, that's when you can start to feel like, okay, I can start to see how this is all going to pan out now, and I'm going to actually make some plans around this. Starting on the new moon on the 15th, Mercury's going to station direct, and you can therefore then start to move forward with these plans. And also, again, remember, this is in a trine to Jupiter in your 10th sign. So everything feels a lot more purposeful in a way. But again, thinking about the why is more about going back, finding opportunities from your past, perhaps. And that's a better way to move forward in a way. And yes, sometimes we have to move backwards to move forwards. And that just, again, means maybe looking backwards, maybe looking at a previous thing you used to do, a previous job, a previous, contacting that boss again that you used to work with, or this or that, whatever it is. Thinking about those kind of things in a practical way as well will help you move forward in the more immediate time frame around finances and all of that. Of course, Saturn is opposing these planets here, and it continues to transit through your 8th sign and aspecting your 10th sign. So there's a lot of uncertainties and unforeseen circumstances that crop up with Saturn in your 8th, and you have to be open to that. There could also be kind of longer delays here in terms of financial issues as well. But again, in a more immediate time frame, I think that things can start to move forward by mid-month. Then I'll show you the full moon on the 29th, and this is in your 9th house sign in Jupiter's sign, as Jupiter now is settled into its retrograde in your 10th sign. So it's again, thinking about the 9th and 10th sign is very much about what gives your life meaning and purpose, and especially the work, the vocation that gives your life meaning and purpose. And it's really more vocation when you link the 9th and 10th house. It's not just about a job, even though it's that too. It's really more about a vocation and meaning and purpose. So thinking about these things on the full moon, I think, will be important, as it's getting a balance right now between the third house sign. Mercury will join those planets in the third sign, the Sun and Mercury in your third sign in October. Great for, everyday busyness and travels and effective communication and planning and strategy, and all of those things are great. But if you get too bogged down in all of those things, then you miss the bigger picture. And this full moon on the 29th is the bigger picture. And to allow and let go into that bigger picture, and again, reason why you do what you do. And thinking about those things by the end of the month, I think, will be important. And I think you will indeed be doing that anyway. So a very busy month, the month of September, Cancer. Things are shifting around in all kinds of different ways that you wouldn't imagine from the beginning of the month. So keep an open mind throughout, I would say. And again, keep that eye on that bigger picture and the bigger question, really. And that is why. So Cancer, I hope that's a bit of help. As always, I wish you all the best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Leo rising and or moon sign for September 2023. Leo, the sun, your ruler, is moving through your sign for the first 2 weeks of September, as it has for the last 2 weeks of August. This is the sidereal zodiac. And the first 2 weeks, although a powerful time for rejuvenation and reinvigoration, essentially with the sun, your ruler, in your sign, is also likely due to some need to take a step back. And that's a lot to do with Mercury retrograde in your sign. That's a sort of reappraisal, review, and reflection, personal self-reflection more so. So, and of course, that's rejuvenating if you allow it to be. If you take some time out and just consider some things instead of keep pushing forward, and think about things that are important to you, especially, and people that are important to you. This is very much about what Mercury is for you. 2nd and 11th house, friends and family, which also trickles down into probably an experience of finances. I think finances are a big part of the picture in September for you, Leo. So reconsidering some issues, financial issues, and adjusting to some things that are about to really take a turn. Now, some things are going to turn so they move forward again, some things move back. And so as long as you can go with the flow with these, then you can really make the most of them. So the going backwards is, as again, I said, Mercury retrograde for the first 2 weeks of September until September 15th on the new moon when it stations direct. But also we have Jupiter about to station retrograde by the 4th of September. So I'll show you that here. So we have Jupiter station retrograde and Venus station direct on the same day, September 4th. So these are very much to do with money, and not just money, but also just what you wish to happen. And of course, money makes things happen. Money makes the world go round, as they say. So I definitely think there's a lot of money issues here because of Jupiter, its involvement, its trine also to Mercury, now again stationing retrograde in your 9th sign this time. So although that's a pleasant, more easeful transit in a way with Jupiter and Mercury in a trine, it is in another way, like I said, really getting you to really focus on reviewing this whole part of your life. And again, it's money in one way, on one level. On a deeper level, it's your aspirations, your goals in life, your sense of value as well, what you value, who you value, and your ability to negotiate with other people, especially, is a big part of this with Jupiter involved. That might also have to do with your children if you have any. If you don't, then it might have to do with some creative endeavor. All of these things are going to be under a great review, really, for the next many months until the end of the year. So that's September 4th. Now, Venus, which has been retrograde, moving backwards through your sign initially and then back into your 12th house sign, is a very sort of, reminiscent. It's very, nostalgic, all of that. It's all lovely in one way, but in another way, it means that you might not be very present with what is. There might be some reverie going on, and you might not be really focused on what is happening in the present. So now that Venus station is direct, it is at least then starting to be more present. And it is still the 12th house until October. You have Venus in your 12th house. So you have this sense of maybe having to forego something. And because it's your third lord in the 12th house, as well as your 10th lord, this is very much having to forego something, you know, some action, very purposeful, deliberate action that you really have to surrender to. So in other words, Venus in the 12th for Leo generally means having to negotiate more or have to give over something or sacrifice something to get something, something like that. So that's Venus stationing direct on September 4th. Let me take you to the new moon on September 15th. So this is actually happening in your sign at the 27th degree. And actually on the day itself, Mercury stations to go direct. So the new moon itself is actually at 27 degrees where Mercury actually stationed to go retrograde on August 23rd. So this whole review is leading to this now new beginning. And it's a very personal new beginning for you, Leo, on September 15th. It might feel like a complete and utter fresh start. And indeed it is. And again, with these planets in a trine to Jupiter, also in an opposition to Saturn, but especially the trine to Jupiter, there's a sense of, okay, I'm clear about who I am and what I'm about and what's important to me and what I stand for. And I'm going to move forward now. I'm going to make a commitment to myself based on that, because the new moon in Uttara Falguni, the latter fruitful one at the end of Leo, moving into Virgo, is this sort of like, okay, this is what I'm about. This is what I'm going to do. And this is what I'm going to have to do. So that happens subsequently, of course, as the sun moves into Virgo, joining Mars, which is moving through Virgo for the month of August. Second sign is very much about what you value. Again, it's a financial house, but again, other than that, it's about family. It's about your values. And it's the family that instill values in you initially, whether you rebel against those or not, that's the setup. So what do you stand for? Your own self-worth also, it's an important part of this. And of course, Mars and Virgo can be a bit frustrated when things aren't moving ahead as quickly as it would like or in the way it would like. Especially remember the first 2 weeks of September around all of these issues, whether it's money issues, family issues, whatever's going on. Make sure that you have a lot of patience packed away for the first 2 weeks of September. By the last 2 weeks of September, after the new moon, everything shifts in a way. And even though it might do so slowly, it's moving forward again. And things can move forward. You can start to plan ahead. And by October, of course, Mercury goes into your second sign, exalted in Virgo. And this is going to be a great time to actually be very strategic. So the next lunation I'm going to mention is the full moon on the 29th. Now, this is an important one because a lot is going to happen after this. I'll talk more about it in October. But even at this point, thinking about this pivot, this full moon, getting us all, and especially getting you, Leo, to really consider things that you cannot change. So up until now, everything is sort of like, okay, I'm doing what I'm doing, and this is important to me, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. That's very much Leo and Virgo. You're on it, right? And you might be too on it and too frustrated when it doesn't work out as you want, but you're on it more or less. And it gets better throughout the month. But by the end of the month, in this full moon in your 8th sign, with Jupiter now retrograde in your 9th, I think this is a time to be more open to unforeseen circumstances and to be thinking actually even that this is not necessarily a bad thing. When we say unforeseen circumstances, that could be a positive circumstance. So don't think of it as negative, but it definitely is. There's something here maybe that feels more outside of your control. That's maybe more uncontrollable. And that's 8th house, essentially. So what I'm saying is, yes, use September. It's a busy month to get busy on doing whatever you need to do to get ahead and do all of those things. But if you don't keep an eye on the bigger picture and the sort of things that are outside of your immediate control and environment, then you're not getting a balanced approach. By focusing on these things, these bigger topics, these, higher minded things as well, I would say, Leo, that you're having to think about things in a kind of broader scope. You know, travel might be a part of that and might form a part of that, but any travel that you do in September must obviously take into account the retrogrades. But study can be another one. Whatever it is, whatever gives you a broadness of mind, as opposed to getting so focused in on the details, will give you, especially around this full moon, a sense of more balance. That there are things within your control, and you can do that. But there are things that you cannot control, and to know the difference, and the wisdom to know the difference is essentially, as the Serenity Prayer goes. Jupiter is about the wisdom to know the difference. Jupiter in your ninth house sign, retrograde now, might stall on that. You might second guess yourself. You might, for the next few months, question what are you doing or what's happening. And your future plans might feel like they're just maybe not quite that clear. And that's okay, because it means that it's going to really focus you on assessing what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it more so. And this is what I've been saying to all the signs. Primarily, this month of September is a better time to ask the question why and not the question how. Because if you ask the question how in September, there are too many sort of details to work out. And yet you need to work them out. And it's a great time to do that. But if you get lost in that and forget the how, then every sort of hurdle is going to bring it, you know, this sense of, oh, I don't know what I'm doing sort of thing. But if you know why you're doing it in the first place, you'll overcome any hurdle, any of the kind of details that you have to work out. It's fine once you know how, or once you know why. The how will come later. So, Leo, a very busy month. Take it on, do what you need to do. Be patient with it, though. Keep an eye on the bigger picture. And again, remember to ask the question, why? Okay, I hope that's been of help. And as always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Virgo rising and or moon sign for September 2023, Virgo, your ruler Mercury is retrograde until the 15th of September. And it's doing so in your 12th host sign, Leo, where the sun is for the first couple of weeks until that new moon on the 15th of September. So the first 2 weeks of September might feel a bit sort of like you're a bit lost. Let's call a spade, as we say in Ireland. This is your Lord and 10th Lord in the 12th house retrograde. It's not the most comfortable position for Mercury anyway, the 12th house, but when it's retrograde in the 12th house, even more so, because you, as you're always familiar with, Mercury retrograde and you go hand in hand. Being Virgo means essentially that you're constantly going through a process of review and reassessment of who you are and what you're doing. This is no different in that way, but because it's in the 12th house, you might not know what you're doing. Essentially, you might not see how things are going to pan out. You might not be clear about anything right now, because a lot of the hidden quote unquote houses are very active in your chart right now. Saturn in the 6th house, planets in your 8th house, Rahu, Jupiter, Uranus, all in Aries, and now planets, including your ruler Mercury, Sun and Mercury, in your 12th house. So you might not be very clear about how you're moving forward now, but at the same time, there's a great need to get on it in a way. And what I mean by that is September is usually a month to get busy, to get scheduling, to plan and do all of these things. And even if you don't know really what the hell you're doing or how it's all going to pan out, you still have to show up and do whatever you need to do. It will all work out. This is a brief transit. It's not a long one. Mercury will actually move into your sign by October. So really September is like setting the stage for that. And by October, you're on it. You're like really efficient and really gung-ho about things. Even by the middle of the month, by 15th of September and the new moon in Leo in your 12th sign, as Mercury stations direct, that can be a time to afterwards to really get focused on moving forward with your plans. Now, at the same time, Mars is in your sign, in Virgo. And that could create some frustration for you as and when things don't seem to be clear to you, or plans are not moving forward as quickly as you would like. Or again, it's a September that is not as efficient as it normally is, a Virgo quote unquote season that just doesn't feel like as efficient. And that could be alone frustrating. Pardon me. So I would say to get on something, to do something, but to be very open-minded about how you do it, to approach it differently, to think about it differently, to let go a little bit more, to ease into it more, to allow more. And once you allow more, things can work themselves out in their own good time anyway. And that's, again, especially the case for the first 2 weeks. But I want to draw your attention to another key shift that's happening by the 4th of September. So here we have Venus station direct. So that's at least one more planet moving forward along with Mars. All the rest of them, of course, are retrograde, including Jupiter, which on the 4th stations in Aries, your 8th sign. So as this is an important planet in terms of home life and relationships, and can also relate to business as well, and it's in a trine to your 10th Lord and your Lord Mercury, there is a need here to kind of, again, address the 8th and 12th houses. So you're having to negotiate something here with some other entity or some other, whether it's in a private or professional setting, you're probably, more likely having to, sit around the boardroom or sit around the negotiating table or sending back and forth emails, trying to figure something out in terms of negotiating something at this turn of the season in September. You're usually more on it, like I said, but here you really need to be more open to other people. So this is also what might lead to the frustration, either other people's frustration or your own unconscious frustration that you kind of shoot yourself in the foot kind of thing with the 12th house. Be mindful of engaging with others right now, that you have your plans, great, but other people have theirs, and to be open to their point of view, what they're thinking about, what they value more so apart from your own. And when you do that, I think this can run a lot smoother and you can get really clear about what you're doing and what your part is in it, and then what other people can bring to the table. And then it's more like a negotiation. So that's a better expression of Jupiter and Mercury in a trine to each other in these fiery signs, Aries and Leo. Although again, 8th and 12th sign is hidden in many ways. That's why I'm saying with especially Mars in your rising sign, try not to let this bubble, under and then explode outwardly in a sort of frustration. Try and use this energy, this impetus to kind of get things done and with the help of others, even if it's not clear to you how that can be done, or you're not sure about their motives or whatever it might be, or how this is all going to pan out. Apply yourself, I would say, and be open-minded. So this is the new moon on the 15th. This is in the 12th whole sign, Leo. This is Mercury, your ruler, also stationing direct. So the 15th of September is a time to really, I think, plant the seeds and make some commitment to yourself in, okay, this is how it's all panned out now. I've finished this thing. There might be a sense of also having finished something in your life at this point, especially professionally. And now by the mid-month period, then you're more clear about, okay, well, that's not then an avenue I can go down anymore or even want to go down. Now maybe I need to go this route. And on the new moon on the 15th, this is a time to really commit to that. And subsequently then to draw the plans up essentially, and to get really committed and focused on the details of how you're going to make that happen. So set your intentions around the new moon on the 15th of September, because after this, things are going to start to move forward and get ironed out in many ways. So the sun moves into your sign then by mid-month, 16th, 17th of September. Then you have the sun in your sign with Mars moving through your sign, a lot of fiery energy. A lot of fiery energy that, again, you're going to have to negotiate with and be mindful of, and its impact on other people more especially. And especially as Mercury continues through your 12th whole sign. So this is like an exchange, as it said, between two planets, Mercury in your 12th sign, sun in your sign. And you really have to, again, sacrifice something. You're going to have to give something up to get something. You're going to have to negotiate with other people, even if you don't want to. And there's something you want here, so it's important that you do. And at this stage, of course, Jupiter, like I said, is moving retrograde, and it continues to trine Mercury, which will come back into a trine with it, leading up to the full moon on the 29th. So this is, I think it's a powerful time in many ways as well, though it's just maybe not obviously so. You can see here on the 25th of September, the exact Jupiter Mercury trine again is in effect. And it's like, yeah, everything can run smoothly in a way, in one way, in terms of, again, career prospects and all of that. But Jupiter, of course, is running backwards against the backtrack of the stars. So it's like, yeah, again, try and be open to other people's whatever it is going on, or in your home life or home situation and setup, that there's something you just have to be mindful of, or someone you have to be mindful of while you're planning ahead right now. So this is the full moon then, which on the 29th of September, which I think is going to allow you to get more balanced. Now, of course, balance is the key thing with Virgo, and the key point about that is that it's often not balanced and eventually leads to balance, which is Libra. But Virgo isn't often balanced, even though it strives for balance all the time. It just can miss the mark because of too much getting stuck in details, and getting stuck in details, as effective as it might feel, it's not very balanced. A more balanced approach would be doing what you can, manage what you can, because there's a lot to manage here, and all of that's great. But if you can't balance it with Pisces, the opposite, the other, whether it's a partner, whether it's any kind of engagement with any other, the full moon in Pisces on the 29th, in other words, is asking you to find more balance and let go a little bit more, give over a bit more, give over a sense of control or management, and allow other people or allow some entity or the universe to manage affairs at this point. So it's a great time, I think, by the end of September to delve into that a bit more and to recognize that, yes, it's about my own self-effort, but oftentimes I just need to just let that go. Once I've put in my effort and done what I've done, just let it go. Venus is moving forward at this point from September 4th as Jupiter goes retrograde, and it's moving forward in your 11th sign in September. And so things can move forward in that respect as well. So there might be something more inspirational moving you forward as well throughout this whole period, even if you are getting bogged down in details and getting frustrated. Venus, I think, can be a great balm, really. And it could be a balm in terms of a social engagement. It could be engaging with friends more, meeting with people, just being more social in general. And that can really move forward and help you move forward as well, even if things seem like they're moving backwards. So, Virgo, it's a busy September. There's definitely a lot of complexity going on, but there's a lot of things that I think you are going to be able to take full advantage of, including the sun moving into your sign, the exchange with Mercury moving forward by mid-month. Things are starting to move forward and getting ironed out, and you feel a lot of energy. It's just make sure that energy is focused in the correct place, that you're not overly doing anything and getting frustrated if things feel like they're not moving forward enough or quickly enough for you. And again, finding that balance with being able to surrender and let go, and you'll be able to achieve so much more in September and into October when you're going to hit the ground running, essentially. So be prepared for that, I would say, Virgo. And I'll talk to you in October. Okay, until next time. For Libra rising and or moon sign for September 2023. So Libra, your ruler Venus is slowing down and appearing to stop moving and will slowly start to move forward again. So it's been retrograde now for few weeks. It's all about reminiscing. It's all about looking back. It's all about dwelling on things from the past. And in relation to the 10th house, initially, of course, it started in your 11th house in terms of asking you about your ambitions and your hopes and dreams for the future. But then it moved back into your 10th house and looking at what you're doing. And of course, many times reminiscing and being nostalgic and thinking about things is lovely. It can also really take you out of the present moment, and you might not be very present with what is in the moment. And so it's important to consider what you're doing in the moment, your ambitions for the long term throughout this whole back and forth with Venus. And it does suggest that you're having to go through some alterations here, that you're having to change your plans in some way, and you're having to be open to things that are unforeseen. You might be able to plan as much as you can, but you have to, as always, Libra, be very open to the unexpected, that other people have their say, the world around you has its own thing going on. You have your bit, but find a balance between both and you're going to be a lot happier, I would say. So that's Venus. It's going to station by the 4th. Let me show you that in your 10th sign. So things can then move forward. On the same day, Jupiter is going to station retrograde in your 7th. So this is very much about a longer term, bigger review, in essence, really, with Jupiter retrograde until the 31st of December this year. So you're going to be questioning a lot in terms of your relationship and your engagement with other people in general, not just your partner or partners. It's very much about how do you engage and how might you be able to engage in a better way for everybody to benefit, actually. How do you communicate with your partner? How do you communicate with the world even? How do you get what you want as well? That's another big part of Jupiter ruling your 3rd and 6th house, now in your 7th house. And because it's retrograde and also with Rahu, This is obviously important to look at in terms of something you might not wish to look at, which is your shadow, which is your ability, as we all have, whether consciously or not, your ability to manipulate other people to get what you want. Now, manipulation is a really loaded word and it's a strong word. I recognize that. But at the same time, if you understand why you're doing it, you don't have to be all, down on yourself about, or other people about when they manipulate. I mean, everybody does it because we all want something from someone. And though you're so compromising, Libra, it doesn't mean that you don't want what you want. And so this Jupiter retrograde is about asking some of these questions: how you communicate, how you engage with other people, who you're engaging with, and why, more especially. As I've been saying to all the signs, the why is the more important question to ask in September, not the how. The how can come after the why. So why do you engage with anyone? Or who do you engage with? And why do you engage with that particular person? Why do you want what you want? Why do you do what you do every day, day in, day out? Why do you do what you do with anyone or anything? Why are you engaging with that? That's the Jupiter question to ask throughout the rest of the year, essentially. The other thing to say is that Mercury continues to retrograde until the new moon on September 15th in a trine to Jupiter, which is going to start retrograde. And they're doing so in an exact trine from the 4th, 21 degrees Aries, 21 degrees Leo. So you're really having to think about what you want and why you want what you want. Now, the 11th house is very much about friend circles, and the relationship here with Jupiter going into this kind of reassessment mode means that obviously there's a lot going on with friends and social circle. So you're having to really rethink things here. And though they're in an easeful transit because they're in the same element, trinal aspect, this can be easeful in one way, but in another way, you just have to be open-minded about how this is all going to pan out and maybe not presume anything about anyone, I would say. The sun moving through here for the first couple of weeks of September is highlighting that friend circle, your social life, your ambitions, your goals, your desires, not just again about your professional desires, although that is part of it, but also your desires in terms of your relationships, whether with a partner or with friends or whoever. The kind of one sort of snag in this whole thing, because all of that sounds okay. It sounds like there's a lot going on, and there is. September is a busy month, so you're having to rethink a lot of things, and the mind is likely to be very busy. But all of that is fine because there's a kind of easefulness about it as well. There's like this ability to negotiate. This is kind of trinal aspect where, okay, I'm going to have to review this, but it seems like it's happening easy. I can go through this process. All of that's well and good. The one snag is Mars. And that's because even though it's the one planet that it's actually moving forward in September, it's in your 12th sign in Virgo, while Mercury continues to retrograde till the 15th. So Mars in your 12th sign, Virgo, Libra, that might feel like an inability to express your will, but at the same time, a propensity for it to kind of bubble over, where it might come out in all kinds of subversive ways, distorted ways, where you might start to sort of feel this angst build. Now, it might just come out in your sleep, which is what the 12th house is, but oftentimes it could just be that your engagement with other people or with family or your partner or whoever, there's some sort of thing that you're having to give over here. You're almost having to give over your will. And anytime anyone does that, of course, that doesn't end well. So you have to be mindful of how much do you negotiate here? How much do you compromise? And how much compromise then becomes too much of a compromise and actually is a bad thing. So think about that, because Mars in your 12th sign in September could really get you to really, I would say, overemphasize that willfulness as well, if you're so inclined, and that could end up in more problems. And then you kind of end up burning bridges, where if you just stated your case from point A and just said what you wanted, it would have been fine. But if you just kept it in and you just maybe didn't know what you wanted or what the other wanted, and then by point Z, you have like a bust up, and it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that. And because you're so sensitive anyway, and you're usually, Libras are the most refined and sensitive and mannerly, you might not say any of this, of course. It might be all kind of left under the surface and not dealt with. That's Mars in the 12th. So just be mindful of that underlying sort of angst that needs an outlet in some way, in a healthier way, perhaps, than a lot of people might deal with this 12th house transit. So let me go to the new moon on the 15th. This is a new moon in your 11th sign, Leo. This is not only just a new moon, but it's also a stationing Mercury. So it's like a new Mercury in a way. And it's like things are new and things are moving forward and you can plan ahead now and everything feels like, okay, I know what I want now. And maybe you know what you want because of things that are just turning around in different ways. And it's like, I'm not really clear. I'm having to kind of readjust to all of these things. But now it's like, okay, this is what I want and I'm going to go for this. And I'm not only that, but I'm going to commit to this. The lunar mansion here is all about commitment. The very end of Leo, bringing us into Virgo. And the plans and the steps that are required for you to do what you want. But also, as included always with Libra, is as the sun goes into Virgo, a reminder that whatever you do want, you also always have to sacrifice something. You always have to compromise something. You always have to give over something in order to get what you want. That's essentially the journey from Leo to Virgo for you as planets transit through here. Mercury will continue through Leo and in October move into your 12th house also. So it's as much about learning about how can you get what you want from compromise as it is about just going for what you want and getting it and grabbing it. You know, that doesn't necessarily work for you the best as other signs might. For example, as Aries might just go and grab something and that's it, they get it. Libra, it's more about obviously compromise always for you. And this is particularly highlighted in September. Let me go forward then to the full moon on the 29th of September. And this is a time to find more balance, as is, you know, your nature. Libra is all about balance, but the balance for Libra is as much about finding a balance in your everyday dealing with whatever you have to deal with and your ability to let go. The other thing to say about that is that because the 12th house is so emphasized in September, by the sign that is usually more orderly, it's what makes Libra. The fact that Virgo, which is the natural 6th sign of the zodiac, is in the 12th sign opposite its nature, and the natural 12th sign of the zodiac, Pisces, is in the 6th house for you. Everything gets switched around. So in other words, if you're getting too focused and even getting detailed about how do I let go of this? How do I compromise and surrender and negotiate this? That itself is an imbalance because you also need to do something. And you need to call on the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, whatever divine energy you want to call it, and Pisces in order for you to access that ability to just do something. Maybe it's a creative thing. Maybe it's a tricky negotiation that has to be, done. Whatever it is, this full moon in Pisces on the September 29th period is asking you to do what needs to be done in a way that is more allowing, in a way that is more balanced also with all the details that you've been getting perhaps bogged down in. So September, it's definitely, so Libra, September is an absolutely a busy month. There's no denying that, but make sure that you're busying yourself in ways that are helpful and not just kind of running around chasing your tail. And also, it's an important month for you, especially in terms of moving forward with plans around your career prospects and also goals and ambitions and desires and relationships are all going to be key aspects of your life moving into September. So Libra, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Scorpio rising and or moon sign for September 2023. So Scorpio, your ruler Mars is moving through your 11th house sign, the sign Virgo, and it is gung-ho about doing so, moving forward, trying to get the details right. And I say trying because Mars in Virgo has to and maybe doesn't like to, but is forced to get bogged down in details. Now, if you can channel this energy in a way that you get really focused, like hyper focused on details, while at the same time being really open-minded about things that could be, misconstrued or misinterpreted, all of that is the usual with a Mercury retrograde. So that's the complexity here. It's not just a Mars in Virgo, it's Mercury ruler retrograde in your 10th house sign with the sun moving through Leo, your 10th sign. So this is very much about focusing on career and changes that are happening here, adjustments perhaps at least that you have to make here, while you're planning ahead. And it's asking the question essentially, why are you doing what you're doing? Which is what every sign is going to be asking themselves in one way or another in September. But because for you, it's very much about work and how everything is working out, and your day-to-day work, as well as your work in a more higher sense and more like your vocation, like why are you doing what you're doing, is an important question to ask. But again, for you, Scorpio, because Jupiter, which is the higher mindedness in a way, is in your sixth sign, which is kind of like the everyday tasks of the work that you must do, and itself is going to retrograde from September 4th. It's going to ask you to actually look at why you do what you do every day. It's more about your routine, in other words, than anything else, Scorpio. So while other signs might be asking bigger questions in terms of more philosophical questions about the why, for you, it's more about why you do things, literally the doing of the things, the everyday habits, routines, work habits, work routines. This all has to change, obviously. It has been changing anyway in the last year and a half with Rahu moving through here, but now with Jupiter moving through here, retrograde, behaving almost like as if we're like Rahu, it's asking you to completely shake it up, that you're really going to have to change the way you approach things, how you approach anything. But again, your day-to-day life, your health routines especially are involved here. So doing something differently, thinking outside the box is going to be more creative. You're going to be able to do things differently and more creative if you shake it up a bit. You know, if you just change up your routine or change something around your lifestyle or somehow, some way, it's going to lead to more creativity, essentially. So Jupiter, I'll show this, it's stationing on the September 4th in your sixth house sign, in a trine, an exact trine to Mercury retrograde in your 10th house sign. It's all about work, essentially. And even though that's easeful in a way, because it's a trine, because it's retrogrades, the two retrogrades now, Mercury and Jupiter, you're really having to really think a lot about why am I doing what I'm doing? What is this all about? You know, and what do I want to get out of it as well? Especially that's another added thing about Mars in your 11th sign now as well. And maybe not getting something out of it as quickly as you want or as much as you want. And that could even literally be like earnings. So Mars in the 11th sign could be this frustration and maybe, you know, the earnings not coming as quickly as anticipated, perhaps, or, you know, I would say any kind of ambition that is not fulfilled as quickly as Mars would like it to be. This could be a frustration for the first 2 weeks of the month, especially. Be very mindful as well around friends and friend circles and associations with any kind of groups or networks that could lead to frustrations. You could get frustrated with them. Your tendency, of course, is to be very sort of picky about that anyway, Scorpio. So you might be very picky about your friends, especially with Mars there, and especially then with the Mercury retrograde. The other thing is that Venus, while Jupiter stations retrograde, Venus stations direct in your ninth house sign. And this is where I think you can find more easefulness. Now, like I said, there is a lot of easefulness between the Jupiter and the Mercury, but it's also having to reflect a lot more. And it's like, you know, that's done, or that didn't work out, or this didn't, you know, pan out the way I wanted it to. So let me rethink all of this. So that can be easeful too. You can just spend the time just taking some time. So that's nothing wrong with that. But Venus is more easeful in a way because it's moving forward and you can be more present with enjoyments that are present and obvious to you. The other things that are happening probably are going to be very much about you going inward a lot more and reflecting and reviewing a lot more in your life in September. But Venus can certainly feel like it's going out there, and it also might mean traveling out there. Venus in the ninth house is nice for travels. It's nice for taking in some culture, any kind of thing that broadens your mind and enjoy that kind of experience, art, things like that. Going to the movies, going to the theater, you know, anything at all. I think Venus in Cancer in the ninth sign is a more enjoyable one. And it really means that now that it's stationing direct, that you're not spending a lot of focus and energy on reminiscing and going back over something, maybe even thinking about past loves, but just generally being nostalgic about things. Really, the nostalgia is coming to the end by the 4th of September, and you're going to be moving into some new kind of realm, something new, whatever that might be, whether it's travels, whether it's cultural things, whether it's, studies, even that could be another thing. Whatever it is, there's something here to enjoy for sure. So make the most of that, I would say, Scorpio, while then you also have to work a lot of other things out. So try not to get too bogged down in the other things either, but instead think about, again, the more important question, as I've been asking all the signs: why do you do what you do? Not the how, not the steps that have to be done, which we could all easily get bogged down in September. Really think again about the why. So let me show you the new moon. It's on the 15th in Leo, in your 10th house sign. It's at 27 degrees of Leo, where Mercury actually stationed retrograde on August 23rd. So this whole process of review, reflection, means that it's leading to this new moon on the 15th of September. And it's going to really feel like an excitable, new, fresh start on the 15th. It might feel like it's like really too heightened and really hyper, but that's all good, because you can really channel this and focus it through your work. Essentially, this is the new moon in your 10th house, with Mercury stationing direct in your 10th house. So definitely, if you've got something to work on, if you've got any work plans, go for it at this point. The new moon day itself is maybe not the best day to actually start something new necessarily, but it's definitely a good day to intend something, to commit to something also, which is this lunar mansion involved here, Uttara Falguni, the latter fruitful one. It's very much about Leo, the sun energy. It's all combined here with this ability to really shine and to really be confident in what you're doing and what you're about, and just go for it. And obviously in subsequent days, as Mercury stations to go direct, and then the sun moves into Virgo, into your 11th sign, this is very much about the steps, the planning, the strategy that it takes to implement all of these things that you're doing. All of these big, goals that you have are going to be the focus from the end of September. Mercury will also join the sun in Virgo in October. And so that's an exalted Mercury. So it's very much about being gung-ho, about planning, going out there, socializing, networking, gaining a lot of traction here, Scorpio. So there's a great many things to do. But again, I would just highlight and draw your attention back to the Jupiter, and especially back to Jupiter when we talk about this full moon on the 29th. By the end of the month, then we have a full moon in Pisces, as Jupiter gets into its retrograde swing. This will be an important time overall, but the whole period, like I said, with Jupiter retrograde, an important time to think about what you're doing and why. Remember, the why is more important, why you're doing it, and what inspires you, or who inspires you. Also, the full moon in Pisces is asking that question. And so that it doesn't allow you then to get too bogged down in the details of your ambitions and all of that, and like, what are the steps I need to put in place to get, from A to Z as quickly as possible. More, it's like, it's this full moon is kind of more about, what do I need to let go of actually to get to where I want to be, and surrender a bit more, allow a bit more, so that things can just slot into place. So Scorpio, it's a busy month in September, and in a way it's busy in so many different ways, and things are turning around in ways that you probably don't expect. But with all of the shakeup and everything up in the air, in a way, it's an exciting time for sure. But it's a time to get more balance. And essentially also because of the equinox, Scorpio or Sagittarius is about balance anyway. But certainly a balance for you between getting the details right and thinking about your work ambitions and goals in life in general, and being able to feel more inspired about anything you're doing. And yeah, thinking about, again, the why. So Scorpio, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Sagittarius rising and or moon sign for September 2023. So Sagittarius, your ruler Jupiter is about to station retrograde on the 4th of September in your 5th host sign in Aries, with Rahu and Uranus either side. So there's a lot of review that's going to take place here in this area of your chart. And reminding you about Jupiter's rulership of your 1st and 4th house. It's very much about personal, private things, home life and all of that. But it's just as much about the opposite, because of course, the 4th house is opposite the 10th house of career. It's very much about your direction in life more than anything. And so thinking about your direction in life, especially as Jupiter is in your 5th house, which is about future planning and speculation also, this is a time to be really cognizant of the bigger themes that are going on here for the long haul. This is a retrograde until December 31st. So it's a long time. It's a few months of you really reassessing your goals in life, your dreams, especially what you would love to do, who you would love to do it with. And more especially, as I've been saying to all the signs, why you do what you do and why you love who you love or what you love. Thinking about these things is going to be a lot more important at this time, especially when you think about the Mars in your 10th sign and Mars aspecting Jupiter. Mars in the 10th sign in Virgo can get really bogged down in details and get lost in those details. And then you cannot see the wood for the trees. So you, in other words, miss the bigger picture that Jupiter is really asking you to focus on. Because if you know why you're doing what you're doing, then you're going to be able to follow through on it more easily. Even if you hit some snags or you hit some issues with having to work out so many details, because there's so many different details to work out in September anyway. But don't get lost in it. Do it to the best of your ability. And then again, think about the bigger picture and the why. Of course, Mercury is retrograde in your 9th host sign, in a trine to Jupiter in your 5th host sign. So feeling inspired in a way is about feeling that inspiration from within. I mean, when you think about the word inspiration anyway, it's inspiration. It's something within you that you feel moved by. So this is more important to think about that with these retrogrades so that you can really find that within yourself. And again, don't get lost in the sort of the details out there. The details will take care of themselves. That's a given. If you, again, think about the more inspired actions that you want to take, then it's going to really fuel you in September. I want to show you by the 4th of September, we have Jupiter retrograde, as I said, and going to do that for the rest of the year. But then we also have on the same day, Venus station direct. So Venus is going to start moving forward now in terms of your goals and ambitions in that way, and being open to, I suppose, the unexpected in a positive way. Be open to unexpected news with Venus. Be more open in general. Venus retrogrades are, it's not that they're not enjoyable. They can be, but they're too reminiscent and too nostalgic in a way to be more present. Now that it's moving forward, Venus can bring you into more the present moment. And I think it's going to be a good time for you to really think about what fuels you, the steps that you have to take for sure to get where you want to go. That's essentially what Venus rules in your chart, 6th and 11th houses. But again, the openness that you have towards the unexpected twists and turns that your way there, it gets you there ultimately. It doesn't matter, all of these twists and turns in the grand scheme of things don't matter a jot. In the end of the day, you get there and, it's more about enjoying the journey, as they say, right? So that's Venus. So enjoy the journey, be more present in your life, be more open to unexpected and good news, unexpected good news. Most of the time when we hear unexpected, we think it's negative. Unexpected could be very positive. Try and be open to something unexpected that's around the corner. Even just do that as a practice, just be open to, oh, wow, something could really positive is just around the corner for me, So that's Venus. There's a new moon then on the 15th of September. That is in your 9th host sign. This is definitely more inspired and more optimistic in a way when in a trine to Jupiter. But again, Jupiter retrograde now is highlighting that the optimism is sought elsewhere. It's not necessarily going to be obviously found in the world out there. It's probably more going to be found within yourself in an inspired whatever. So that could also mean practically, though, using this new moon to kind of get re-inspired by something. Like that means also maybe going back to something you used to do or reconnecting with something or someone that really inspired you before. And then by doing that, then you can really feel that impetus to move forward. Now, it's an important time, of course, moving forward because Mercury is going to station direct on the new moon day itself on the 15th. This is an important new moon, obviously. In your 9th sign, most definitely. This sense of feeling not just inspired, but like purposeful. And this is like what I'm meant to be doing. I'm going to do this. And so now is the time to sort of plant those seeds and to start something new and to at least intend to start something new. It's not always the best day of the new moon to actually begin something necessarily, but it is the best day to intend it. And as Mercury stations, because it is stationing, it's not moving, but it is at least stationing direct, things can subsequently move forward. So here's everything moving forward. This is the sun going into your 10th house sign by the 16th, 17th. Then you have the sun, Mars in your 10th sign, and they like it there. It's a very prominent place to put the sun and Mars. And this is kind of like a gung-ho sort of action orientated. I'm going to get really on this now and plan this out. And again, professionally, personally, in every which way. So that's the sun in your 10th house. Mercury will continue through your 9th house and then become exalted in October in your 10th house. So that's even more powerful. And that's like, you better hit the ground running in a way by October for really all of these plans that you're setting in place in September. But again, because September is so complicated, otherwise, there's so many things like going back and forth. There's so many things turning around in different ways that you cannot even imagine in the beginning of the month, that really it's a month to plan and all of that for sure. But it's kind of like I said, hit the ground running in October so that you can really implement all of those things. And again, going back to the why, as I've been saying to all the signs, more importantly is the why. Why do you do anything that you do? That's going to be a more important question to ask. And that might be a good time, therefore, on the full moon on September 29th to ask that question. Why do I do what I do? What inspires me? What would bring me joy? What would bring me happiness? And not just about all the kind of work, all the tasks that I have to do every day, not all of those things necessarily, but just the kind of what am I able to kind of feel that kind of inspiration by doing? When you think about work, when you really think about it, let's face it, most people don't work. Most people don't kind of work themselves to the bone in physical hard labor or mental exhaustion. I mean, it's kind of like most people like just complain about the sort of things they have to do every day because they're essentially not inspired by what they're doing. But really, they may be just sitting at a desk or doing whatever that is not necessarily hard. It's just it's not really inspiring to them. So that's, in other words, why it's more important for you to feel inspired about whatever you do. And then you'll do anything. You'll do any work because it won't feel like work then. So that's very much the 9th house, the eighth, the 5th house, the 9th and 10th house combined, especially, is that kind of doing work purposefully and more meaningful work. And again, maybe I'll just drop the word work then. Just do something that's meaningful. And this full moon on the 29th of September is about, again, all of that feeling more inspired and feeling that happiness from that inspiration, which is essentially your nature, Sagittarius, that kind of inspired feeling. And when I say feeling, that's essentially what Sagittarius is all about, because Sagittarius, you're ruled by Sagittarius, Jupiter, but Jupiter also rules your 4th house, Pisces, which is a more watery sort of emotional nature. And this full moon in Pisces is about tapping into that feeling of inspiration. When we say inspired, we don't say, I think inspiration, we feel inspiration. So that would be a good time on the full moon. So Sagittarius, it's a complicated month in many ways, but I think for you, more than most signs, I would say these transits are working out in very, very beneficial ways. It doesn't mean that, all of it is all fine and dandy. No, it just means that there are things here that are really positive for you that you can work with, that even if they're not like very obvious from the get-go, the twists and turns take you there eventually. And again, like all the signs are asking, the more important question to ask is why. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is that inspires you? Not the how. The how will work itself out eventually. So I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Capricorn rising and or moon sign for September 2023. So Capricorn, Saturn, your ruler, is continuing to retrograde. Nothing new there. In your 2nd house sign, which is all about family, finances, values, vision. Also, another key indicator of the 2nd house is vision, both outer and inner vision, the ability to see clearly, to have a vision. And again, values are an important indicator there, because it's like what you find important, you will see. You're going to look for what you want to see, right? So Saturn here is obviously asking you to have a look again. Saturn is asking you to reflect on and reassess and rework all of these things in your life, whether it's family dynamics, the connections to your family, financial dynamics. All of those things are going to be really worked out during this period. And all of that, of course, has a really profound effect on you personally because it's your ruler. And the second house is really the most, in a way, closest to you in a way. It's like family and all of that, but the kind of self-worth and self-reflection on what is your worthiness and your value, and your value in many other ways within society, within your family, within your own being, on your own at home, just in the sacredness of your own space. Thinking about your own self-worth and self-value is an important one. But of course, it just reflects in the outer relationships, in your family dynamics and all of that, and friends as well, friend circles and social life. So that's Saturn as it continues to retrograde through your second house. It's a big one. It's continued to aspect, therefore, your fourth house, with so much going on there in Aries, including in a few days on the 4th of September. I'll show you it here. Jupiter was stationed to go retrograde. So on the 4th of September, we have two things happen. We have Jupiter retrograde and Venus stationed to direct. So this means that you're going to be obviously reflecting and reviewing on a lot of the changes that have already occurred in your home life, in your personal life. And in a way, it's a reassessment, a reevaluation of those things also, and what makes you happy and who makes you happy, and thinking about what inspires you or who inspires you and why you did what you did or you do what you do. As all the signs are asking, the why is going to be an important one in September, as you'll see. So Jupiter stations retrograde with Rahu retrograde in your fourth house, with Mars in your ninth house, aspecting your fourth house. So Mars in the ninth house now is really getting you to look at the why. What is inspiring you to do what you do? Saturn and Mars both aspect Aries, your fourth house, with Rahu, Jupiter, Uranus, all in Aries. So there's so much focus on your home life in a way. And obviously, it's important that you don't lose perspective here as well, because that could easily happen with so much change happening and so much focus on your home life, that you don't have a balanced sense of, work-life balance, as it said, or whatever it is, friend circles versus, all of these things that are really drawing your attention inward into your home and being on your own. The fourth house is very much about like alone time as well. It's not just the 12th house that's all about being alone, which Jupiter does represent in your chart. But because it's in your fourth house, that's kind of further emphasizing that need to have some space for yourself, essentially. Nothing wrong with any of that. You need to give it to yourself, but I'm just saying a lot of balance is required here as well, because there's so much imbalance that's potential here in September, with, of course, this month being very much about finding balance, and the solstice, or the equinox. The equinox is on the 23rd of September. But apart from that, because of all the planets lined up on one side here, the fast planets, Venus, Sun, Mercury, Mars, opposite these slow planets, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Jupiter, all of these opposing each other. Really, September, more than any other equinox, is this year a time for finding more and more balance. So as Jupiter stations retrograde, on the same day, Venus will station direct in your seventh sign. So that is definitely a lot more enjoyable. And I think that's something you can tune into to find more balance. And that means also a balance between yourself and you focusing overly on yourself and your home and on your own, versus you being with others. So now that it's no longer retrograde, I think it's able to bring you more into the present moment more and enjoy the presence of other people, for example. Because Venus retrograde is enjoyable in one way, but it's also just very sentimental and nostalgic and kind of constantly kind of reviewing things. And that's all well and good, but again, it takes you out of the present moment. So now that Venus is direct, it's going to bring you back into the present, into like a relationship to someone or something, even just engaging with the world out there a bit more. So again, you find more balance. Mercury continues to retrograde until the 15th, until the new moon on the 15th, which is an important turning point in the month. But until then, it's this retrograde. Of course, it's in the 8th house in your chart and in a trine to Jupiter in your 4th house. So this, again, very deep, private, personal indications here of review, reflection, and needing to almost in a way negotiate with yourself, make those kind of negotiations very apparent to yourself, even though they might not be obvious because they're very hidden perhaps, but there's definitely a lot to consider here. And it might include other people, they might get involved as well, but really it's more important that you consider these on your own in a way. Mercury continues, as I said, until the 15th. So this is the new moon. So the new moon is an important time every month, of course, but this month I think it's an important new moon. It's got Mercury stationed direct on the new moon day on the 15th. At 27 degrees, the new moon, that's where actually Mercury stationed retrograde. So there's a whole sort of, having worked it all out, an ability now on the new moon to kind of start to plan ahead. And this new moon is in Uttara Falguni, which is very much about making commitments and agreements. And because Mercury is going to subsequently move across here again, it's like, okay, well, let's make a commitment to something. Let's make an agreement. Let's draw up even an agreement, or let's an unwritten agreement, and let's focus on that, and let's plan it out, and let's move on that. Because then subsequently the sun moves into your ninth sign. It's a very powerful position, but it exchanges with Mercury in your eighth sign. So there's a lot of things to negotiate here in planning anything moving forward after this new moon on the 15th. And of course, you can do that. It's important not to get bogged down in the details of that, of course, as well. But again, Sun, Mars in your ninth sign now, Mercury in your eighth sign. Just be open to changes in any kind of plans that you're doing, especially around travel plans and things like that. Opposite side of the zodiac, it's important to keep an eye on that because we have all the other slower moving planets. So here's the full moon on the 29th. So the 29th, the full moon in Pisces opposes, of course, the sun in Virgo and the Mars here, and Mercury's moving forward now. And everything can start to move forward in one way, in the everyday sense, or in your bigger plans in a way. But to get a balance right with this full moon, as every full moon asks us to, is to find more a sense of connection to something more deeply within yourself and enjoyable in your own self. Because you could easily get lost in the sort of planning the things out there and dealing with people out there and changes out there and all of that, and lose perspective. And it's important not to lose perspective for this full moon, as especially with Jupiter retrograde, that you think about, again, what fuels you, what inspires you, what would make you happy, why do you do anything? You know, essentially it's because it would make you happy, or you think it would make you happy. But of course, the tricky dynamic for you, Capricorn, as is the case with Cancer, you have the third ruler also being your 12th ruler. The third lord of Pisces is the lord of Sagittarius. And those are two kind of almost seems like contradictory qualities, because the third house is about selfishness and the things that you want, but the 12th house is about sacrifice and what you need to give. And so in a way, it essentially represents a give and take, and why Capricorn and Cancer are both very much this kind of sign. You know, it's all about give and take. So for you, for this full moon, Capricorn, I would say thinking about giving and taking, but thinking about the taking part more, I would say, for this full moon. And what is it that you want to get out of this engagement? Whatever kind of engagement it is. There's a lot of the social, quote unquote, houses being activated right now. There could be a lot of enjoyment here, and everything is very well and good. But again, thinking about why is going to be important, a question to ask, especially when you get very involved with other people, or if you were to, and lose that sense of centeredness in yourself and in that kind of home and stability that you're creating right now, which is important to create and to continue to create. So a very busy month in many ways, an excitable month in many ways, but also a very sort of back and forth, and everything's sort of turning around in many unusual ways. So make sure that you're open-minded about anything that's happening. Make sure that you're using the energy for what it's good for, which is like review, reflection, planning, strategy, moving ahead eventually by the end of the month, and then allowing things to kind of settle down into the end of the month and the full moon, and to settle into a routine as well of, you know, I think many things are going to, you know, become more clear by the end of the month. And for you, Capricorn, I think it's a balance between, again, more public and private. That's very much a big theme in September. So I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead, and until next time. For Aquarius rising and or moon sign for September 2023, Aquarius, your ruler Saturn is transiting in your sign, continues to do so. Nothing new here, just a continuation of the themes. And Saturn, of course, is asking you to get really focused and real about what is achievable right now because of its aspects to your 3rd and 10th houses, as well as your 7th house. It's really asking you to engage more deliberately in a more focused way, and to engage with your work and your vocation, your highest achievements in a way in the world, in a very deliberate, focused way. And of course, with retrograde Saturn, it's asking you to refocus. You're like having to really double down on that and to really focus on that. And as it aspects your 3rd sign, especially with Rahu, your other ruler, in your 3rd sign now, with Jupiter also about to station retrograde, all in your 3rd sign, it's asking you to really rethink everything and how you approach anything or anyone, whether it's an expressiveness, your ability to express yourself, or whether that's through the written word, or whether it's through art form, or whatever it might be. There's a need to really focus on the engagement itself and how you're engaging with other people. And because it's ruler Mars aspects and does so from the 8th sign, you're having to keep an open mind all the time. Mars in the 8th in Virgo is definitely a sort of like, be open to unexpected twists and turns in whatever it is you're doing. But when you add Mercury retrograde, that just adds to that kind of need to be open, essentially. September is a very sort of busy month in many ways, but it's so busy because so much is changing. And in a way, Aquarius, though this might feel excitable, if you can draw back on the Saturn in your sign and to really fully pull back on your sense of self and focus on yourself and what is the self anyway, but to focus on the self in a practical way, like even on your body. If it's your rising sign, just focus on your body. When change is happening, like, it's important to really get that kind of groundedness. As it said, it's kind of somatic experience of being embodied is important, because change can be really quite disturbing to our mental field. Everything is moving around. So I think to be open to the changes, because they're absolutely necessary, and it could be exciting for you and all of that, but making sure that you embody them. It's like when something happens in our life and you make a change, perhaps that's more deliberate, or a change happens to you that seems less deliberate, but it's happening anyway. How many times do you give yourself the time to actually sit with that? And when someone says, quote unquote, sit with that, that's what literally they're asking you to do. It's like, be with the change, embody that, fully embody that change, flesh it out. What does that feel like in your body? What does that new thought feel like? What does that new routine feel like? What does that new whatever, that relationship, does that being with that person feel like? Doing that work, whatever it might be, thinking about all these things. There are obviously a lot of things to negotiate here in September, with Mercury retrograde in your 7th house, the sun in your 7th house for the first couple of weeks leading up to that new moon in your 7th house on September 15th. So you're having to negotiate a lot with your partner or other people in general because of all of these other changes that are happening for you personally and professionally. There's a lot of personal and professional changes for you in September, for sure. But again, like I'm saying to all the signs, because all of the planets are opposite each other, with all the slower moving planets on one side and all the faster moving planets on the other, we're all having to get a balance in September, and around the equinox, that's even more important. And so make sure you get a balance between your own sense of self and your own self-worth and your own expressiveness versus other people, and what you need to do for other people and how you need to negotiate for them, and not get lost in them, but to keep that sense of focus on yourself while experiencing all the thrills and spills of all of those different kind of engagements, I would say. The 4th of September is when Jupiter stations retrograde, and in your 3rd sign. This is very much about, again, rethinking, reassessing how you express yourself, how you get what you want, and how you say what you want. First of all, being clear about what you want, and more importantly, as with all the signs, why you want it. It's more important to ask the question, why I want what I want. What is the meaning and purpose behind this? What is it I want to achieve from this, as Jupiter retrogrades through your 3rd house? It might not be so clear from the outset, but it eventually will get clear to you why you're doing what you're doing. What do you want to do? And as it does that, Venus is going to station direct on the same day, September 4th. So Venus is in your 6th house sign. Now, although Venus is moving forward now, and it likes, obviously, as all planets who usually move forward, like to move forward, and you can then feel like things are moving forward in your life, therefore. It doesn't so much like the sixth house, for the reason that sixth house is very much about dealing with everyday stuff and maybe having to deal with things you don't want to deal with. And Venus is about just enjoying things. So a better thing to do would probably be just enjoy the things you have to do. Enjoy the sort of everyday stuff. You have to get into some sort of routine here. And it could be a health regime. It could be a work routine. It could be whatever it is you're working out right now with all the other changes that are happening. It's important that you find some enjoyment in it. Otherwise, it might be more difficult to do it. So that's probably a better expression of Venus in the sixth house in September. Find something you enjoy in your everyday life and connect with that. And it'll bring you into your senses, bring you into the moment, and it'll bring you more enjoyment. So then the new moon, which is 2 weeks later or so, we have the new moon on the 15th. So this is in your seventh sign, in Leo, at 27 degrees Leo, where Mercury actually stationed to go retrograde in August. So this is obviously a turning point, and a new moon, a Mercury direct station, everything sort of feels like it's hinging on this moving forward point now, and everything can feel like it's moving forward essentially. So definitely a lot more balance to achieve here, Aquarius, in your engagement with the world, in your ability to hold yourself and hold space for yourself while you engage with the world. You might have lost that balance up until now, but I think you can get it back at this point, and then make a commitment, not just to yourself, but to others. Like, get that balance right. And after this, you can really implement all of those changes that are really have been brimming in a way, like this whole time, everything's been like stewing away. Now is the time to really start to implement those changes as all the planets move forward. Mercury moves forward by the 15th. Sun then 16th, 17th moves into Virgo. And then everything starts to move forward. It just feels like, you're planning ahead. Mercury's going forward now. Venus is going forward. Sun and Mars is going forward. The sun is in your eighth house. Things are changing in your life in a big way. Even just having Mars in your eighth house shows that there's a lot of change going on in your career. And again, in how you're expressing yourself. And with Mars aspecting your third sign, with Jupiter retrograde, definitely a whole review and reflection on how you're saying what you want to say. And again, whether it's actually verbally, physically, even through your body, even thinking about it like your physical, your embodiment, or whether it's just saying it in a creative endeavor, whatever it is, it's about how you express who you are, essentially. And to be open to different ways of doing that, I would say, in September, because definitely September is not your typical September. It's always a month of being more honest and efficient and planning and all of that. But if you only do that this September, you're wasting an opportunity to kind of really loosen up all of these kind of binds that we get into and just doing it the same way and not really having any kind of other way of doing it or creative outlet. For you, I think this is a great time to really loosen all that, to kind of shake it all up so that you can get more creative in different kinds of ways, engage with different kinds of people, say things differently, do things differently, change your routine. Everything gets changed so that you can really be more creative, essentially. And then at the end of the month, we have the full moon in your second sign. So let me bring it back to your rising sign. So second sign, Pisces, full moon on the 29th. This is Jupiter sign. This is Jupiter retrograde now in your third sign. And again, Jupiter is all about more meaningful pursuits and something that is dear to you and you want dearly. And of course, it's reflection now and review over many months is going to draw you back into what is more inspired, and inspired meaning within you, right? So this full moon is also asking you to find a balance between the full moon in Pisces and the sun in Virgo, and making sure that you're not getting too caught up in all of the details of why, of the what and all of the how and all of that, how especially. And again, thinking about the why, the inspiration, the meaning and purpose behind the things that you're saying. We often just say things without even thinking about what we're saying or meaning what we say. Thinking about saying it very deliberately, clearly, and being clear with that, with ourselves first, with yourself first, Aquarius, I think is going to be an important part of this. To speak your truth, in other words. And to speak your truth, of course, you need to know your truth. And this full moon, I think, is an important time to consider these kinds of topics. So I hope that's been of help, Aquarius. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Pisces rising and or moon sign for September 2023. So Pisces, Jupiter, your ruler, is now about to station retrograde in Aries, your second host sign, on September 4th. And this is a time to review, reflect, and reassess some major themes in your life in terms of practically money issues, of course, family dynamics and all of that, but more internally, as is always the case with retrograde planets, a sense of what is important to you, what you value personally, as in you valuing yourself, but also you valuing what you do. And what you do, especially because Jupiter rules your 10th host sign also, as well as your rising sign. So very much about what you do. And also, as I've been saying to all the signs, really everyone, we're all going to be asking this anyway, but I think you more than others is going to ask this, and that is why you do what you do. And so it's really important to think about why you do what you do and what you want to achieve by that. Because if you get so bogged down in all the details and the how to do it, you could easily get lost in that because of Mercury retrograde and the Mars and the Virgo and all of that, and everything turning around in unusual ways and things not working out as maybe as you planned. Everything's sort of up in the air in a way in September. And although that's a very positive thing because everything feels like it's possible, like anything is possible in September, everything is all over the place. So it's like you could make anything happen, it seems. But again, unless you're clear about why you do what you do, what inspires you, what gives your life meaning, what gives you a sense of purpose, and what can really bring true value in your life. I would say that's more than anything the case. Second sign, what is going to bring you value more than anything else? And keep your head in that, I would say. And then you don't have to get so bogged down in the details that you lose perspective. So let me show you on the 4th of September. This is the Jupiter retrograde in Aries, and Venus will actually station direct on the same day. So in one way, things are moving forward with Venus, of course, as it stations direct, and all of that reminiscing and all of that sort of pondering all of these things for Venus, as enjoyable as it might be in the 5th sign, can start to move forward, or at least bring you more into the present also, more especially because as it stations, it stops, appears to stop, and you can start to consider, how these things can move forward in your life. And for you, Pisces, Venus is very much about what you want, and especially when it connects with the 5th house, and maybe connecting more intimately also with someone. It could be your children even, or it could be a partner. But whoever it is, I think it's about connecting more so and being more present with whoever in whatever way. So again, with the Venus retrograde, it can sometimes be enjoyable, but like I said, it's just maybe you're not very present because if you're reminiscing, if you're being very nostalgic, you're not very present with who's with you there, whether it's a child, whether it's a lover, whether it's a partner, whoever. And now it's more potential. Now it's a potential just to enjoy their presence, enjoy the experience, and have some fun. That's literally what the 5th house is all about. Just have some enjoyment. So as that's there available, I think that'll be important as well, even though there are bigger questions to ask about, again, the why you do what you do. Now, the Mercury retrograde for the first couple of weeks is going to continue until the new moon. And so that in your 6th house is potentially getting you bogged down in the details of what you're doing in home life, and your relationships might be affected by that in a big way, especially your relationships, I would say, and especially with Mars in your 7th sign. So in a way, this is a bit of a tricky month, Pisces, in September for your relationship, especially with your romantic partner. Any kind of relationship would be a tricky one, but obviously your romantic partner is somebody you deal with it more, and this can really lead to issues. So Mercury retrograde is one in the 6th house, but then Mars in the 7th is another. And so just being really mindful of getting overly heated and getting frustrated and taking it out on someone else, or they perhaps taking it out on you, and maybe just give yourself that space, give each other that space you need to work these things out. And especially for the first couple of weeks, I would say, but really throughout the whole month, because then we have the sun move into Virgo, exchange with Mercury in the 6th house. So a bit more complicated for sure. Let me show you the new moon that occurs on the 15th. And this is going to be in your, let me bring it back to your rising sign here. So this is in your 6th sign. So this is where Mercury stations direct on the 15th as the new moon at 27 degrees of Leo occurs. And this is at the degree actually that Mercury had stationed retrograde in August. So everything is sort of coming full circle here, or coming around to kind of come back forward again. And things can seem like they're moving forward now, at least. And it might feel excitable as well. And you might anticipate everything moving forward. And again, just be mindful of the kind of tricky balance that has to occur now, especially then on the days after, as the sun goes into Virgo and exchanges with Mercury in Leo. This is again why, although things can move forward now and you can plan ahead, there can be some interesting dynamics here with other people. So be open-minded about it. You have to negotiate some things here, and it might not be the easiest thing to do, but keep an open mind about it at this point, even more so, I would say, than even during the retrograde, because in a way, it's when things start to move forward and you're gung-ho about planning ahead, that if someone doesn't fit into that plan as easily, or they're not playing along, or whatever it might be, that's when frustrations can come to the fore. Mars, of course, continues through your sign all month, so that's something to be mindful of. And to think about that kind of engagement as an energizing factor, not just something that depletes your energy. If somebody annoys you, for example, that's like an energy. That's like, okay, I can use that as a fuel to do something for myself. And because Mars aspects your sign and your 2nd sign, where Jupiter is now retrograde, it's really asking, you to do something with this. It's definitely not a month to sit on any of this, even if things seem like they're not going anywhere or going quickly enough. It's definitely not a month for that. It's a month to really be proactive and engaged with all of this. And as busy as it is, obviously not to overdo that, but to really do stuff. Even when it seems like it's not going anywhere, it's all being worked out anyway. So then the full moon, which is on the 29th, is in your sign. Let me show you this here. Oh, let me go forward again. So this is a full moon in Pisces in your sign. And it's balancing the opposite sign, Virgo, with the sun in Virgo. And so this is a good time to find balance in terms of your everyday sort of working things out and working things out with the other, especially your partner, maybe. And while you work all of that stuff out, use this full moon on the 29th of September to kind of let go a little bit more, to kind of just surrender a bit more about, I would say, again, connecting in with that Jupiter retrograde with this full moon even, and thinking about, again, who am I and what am I about and what's meaningful to me? Why do I do what I do? And this full moon might be a time to think about that. Think about who you are, what you love, who you love, why you love even, and that will allow you to get more balance in your life than just focusing in on the sort of the other as a problem, or the other that isn't seeming to fit into my schedule or my demands or my whatever, or my life. Use the energy, I would say, to focus in on yourself for this full moon, and overall, I would say, in the whole month, so that it doesn't feel like it gets as bogged down in the sort of everyday nitty gritty of it. The nitty gritty stuff needs to be worked out for sure, but if you get lost in it, you just lose perspective. And so to not lose perspective means to think about, again, the biggest question in September is the why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What gives my life purpose and meaning? What really fuels me? What inspires me? Who inspires me? So, Pisces, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time.